The water of the Bosphorus is cold, even in summer. It's a deep, dark, unforgiving cold. On a moonless night in 1648, under the reign of Sultan Ibrahim, the waters received a terrible offering. Nearly 300 women, the Sultan's entire harem, were bound in sacks weighted with stones. Their terrified screams were muffled by the coarse fabric, their struggles futile against the unyielding knots. One by one, they were cast from boats into the Black Channel, their brief, glittering lives extinguished in the silent depths. Why? Because the Sultan, in a fit of paranoia or madness, had decided to start anew. He wanted a fresh harem, and the old one was simply discarded. Like so much furniture, this single act of unimaginable cruelty is not an outlier. It is the defining rule of the game. Welcome to the Ottoman Imperial Harem, the most dangerous place on earth to be a woman. It was a world of breathtaking luxury and unspeakable brutality. A golden cage where the inmates were both prisoners and contenders in a lethal Game of Thrones. And in this game, a young girl, ripped from her home and sold as a slave, could rise to become an empress who ruled the world. But to do so, she had to walk a path paved with blood, betrayal, and the bodies of her rivals. This is the story of that path. This is how you survive the harem and become a sultana. Story begins not in the perfumed halls of a palace, but in the dust and terror of a scorched village. Imagine a young girl, perhaps 12 or 13 years old, with a name given to her by her mother, a name that is about to be erased forever. She lives in a place like Greece, or Circassia, or the plains of modern-day Ukraine. Her life is simple, perhaps difficult, but it is hers. Then, one day, the sky darkens with the smoke of burning homes and the air fills with the thunder of hooves. The Tatar slave raiders, the fearsome cavalry of the Crimean Khanate, descend like a plague. They are the primary suppliers for the insatiable human markets of the Ottoman Empire. For the girl, there is no escape. The screams of her family are the last familiar sounds she will ever hear. She is bound, thrown across a horse, and her world dissolves into a blur of terror and pain. Her name is forgotten. Her past is obliterated. She is no longer a person. She is cargo. The journey to Constantinople, the heart of the empire, is a crucible. The captives are chained together, force, marched for weeks, or crammed into the foul. Smelling holds of slave ships. Disease, starvation, and despair are the constant companions. Many die. Those who survive are broken, stripped of their will, their humanity ground down until all that remains is a primal instinct to endure. They arrive at the slave markets of the great city, a chaotic, terrifying spectacle of human commerce. Here, in the Avret Pazari, the woman market, she is put on display. She is poked, prodded, her teeth inspected like a horse, her body scrutinized by wealthy merchants and palace officials. It is here that her fate takes a dramatic turn. An agent from the palace, a eunuch with eyes that miss nothing, spots something in her. Perhaps it's the defiant spark in her eyes, a rare shade of hair, or a bone structure that promises future beauty. She is purchased not for a rich man's villa, but for the most exclusive, most secretive, and most prestigious household in the empire, the Imperial Harem of the Topkapı Palace. Passing through the gates of the palace is like entering another world. The sheer scale and opulence are staggering. Courtyards of pristine marble pavilions decorated with brilliant blue Iznik tiles, gilded domes that glitter in the sun. Fountains whisper in lush gardens, and the air is thick with the scent of jasmine and roses. It is a vision of paradise. But as the massive doors of the harem, the forbidden place, swing shut behind her, the reality of her new life begins to dawn. This paradise is a prison. A beautiful, luxurious prison, but a prison nonetheless. She is now and forever cut off from the outside world. She will never again see a man other than the Sultan himself, and the eunuchs who guard her. Her first encounter is with the master of this domain, the Kislar Asantasi, the chief black eunuch. This man is one of the most powerful figures in the entire Ottoman Empire, often third in command after only the Sultan and the Grand Vizier. He controls every aspect of the harem, from its vast finances to the lives and deaths of the thousands of women within it. The eunuchs are the guardians, the administrators, and the spies of the harem. Their own stories are tragic, captured as boys from regions like Ethiopia or the Sudan. They underwent a brutal castration that had a horrific mortality rate. Those who survived were transformed into a third gender, able to move between the male and female worlds of the palace, their loyalty supposedly guaranteed by their inability to father children and establish their own dynasties. The Kislar Asausi looks at the new girl, and his gaze is cold and appraising. He is her warden, her master, and potentially her most important ally or deadliest enemy. She is taken, stripped, and bathed. Her old clothes, the last link to her former life, are burned. She is given a new name, a Turkish or Persian name. That sounds poetic. Perhaps Gulbahar, Spring Rose, or Mapika. Moon-faced, her identity is completely remade. She is now a Kariye, the lowest rank in the harem hierarchy, a servant in training. Her journey has just begun, and the odds are overwhelmingly stacked against her. Of the hundreds of girls in the harem, most will live and die in obscurity, serving the more powerful women, never even meeting the Sultan. To rise, she must learn the rules of this savage new world, and learn them fast. The harem is not a mere collection of concubines. It is a rigorously structured institution, a school with a deadly curriculum. The new Kariye enters a formal education system, unlike any other, under the watchful eyes of the Kalfas, the senior women and governesses. She learns the Turkish language until it is as natural as her native tongue. She is taught to read and write, to master the intricate calligraphy of the Ottoman court. She studies the Quran and the tenets of Islam, for she must convert. But her education goes far beyond the academic. She is trained in the arts that define a refined court lady: how to play the oud or the tambur, how to sing the haunting melodies of the palace, how to dance with a grace that is both alluring and elegant. She learns to sew and embroider with the skill of a master artisan, creating intricate patterns on silk and velvet. This is not simply to pass the time. These skills are tools: a beautiful voice, a captivating dance, a perfectly embroidered handkerchief. Any of these could be the thing that catches the Sultan's eye. Or more importantly, the eye of the one who truly controls access to the Sultan, his mother, the Valide Sultan. The Valide Sultan, the Queen Mother, is the absolute ruler of the harem. She is the living embodiment of the ultimate goal. She was once a slave girl just like the new Kariye. She survived the gauntlet, bore the previous Sultan a son, and lived to see that son ascend the throne. Now, she wields enormous political power. She manages the harem's vast properties and wealth, influences the appointment of grand viziers, and corresponds with foreign ambassadors and even European queens. Her word is law within these walls. She and her senior retinue are constantly observing the girls. They are looking for beauty, yes, but also for intelligence, obedience, and a temperament that will not cause trouble, or at least a temperament that can be controlled. Any girl who hopes to be presented to the Sultan must first win the approval of his mother. And so, the new Kariye learns the most important lesson of all, the art of harem politics. She learns to be silent when she wants to scream, to smile when she is terrified, to feign friendship with the girl sleeping next to her, even while knowing that girl would sell her out for the slightest advantage. The harem is a web of alliances and rivalries. Friendships are currency, and information is a weapon. A misplaced word, a rumor whispered in the right ear, could see a girl demoted, beaten, or even quietly disappeared. The punishments are brutal. Floggings are common. For more serious offenses, a girl could be exiled to the old palace, a place of political irrelevance, or worse, meet the fate of those women of Sultan Ibrahim, a sack and a quick trip to the Bosphorus. Every day is a test. Every interaction is a calculation. The Kariye learns to navigate this treacherous landscape, her ambition a tiny flame she must shield from the ever-present winds of envy and malice. She watches the other girls. She sees who is favored, who is punished. She learns from their mistakes. She understands that to rise from Kariye, she must become a Wi Kasazdi, the favored one, the girl who has caught the Sultan's eye. And then, one day, it happens. Perhaps the Sultan glimpses her in a corridor. Perhaps he hears her singing from a balcony. Or most likely his mother, the Valide Sultan, decides that this girl is ready and presents her as an option. The selection process is a moment of supreme tension. The Sultan is passing through the harem, and the concubines are lined up for his inspection. The Kislar Asotasi walks before him, and the girls are expected to stand with their eyes downcast in perfect silence and humility. To look the Sultan directly in the eye is an act of shocking audacity, one that could lead to severe punishment, or if the Sultan is intrigued by such boldness, could be the very thing that sets a girl apart. Our young Carrier, now a poised and educated young woman, feels his presence approach. The air crackles with a mixture of terror and desperate hope. It is in this moment that the Sultan performs the simple gesture that will change her life forever. He drops a handkerchief at her feet. It is a sign, a summons. She has been chosen. That night, she will be prepared for the Sultan's bedchamber, the Uchtdonk Kar Sofasi. This is not a romantic encounter. It is a state-managed ritual of immense significance. The chosen girl is bathed, perfumed, and dressed in the most exquisite garments and jewels from the palace treasury. She is led by the eunuchs along a specific hallowed route, known as the Golden Road, a pathway that connects the harem to the Sultan's private quarters. The name is literal and symbolic. For a concubine, this short walk is her only path to a golden future. With every step, her heart hammers against her ribs. She is walking towards the most powerful man in the world, a man who holds the power of life and death over millions, including her. Her entire training, her very survival, has led to this moment. When she arrives at his chamber, tradition dictates she must enter his bed from the foot, a gesture of submission. The night she spends with the Sultan is a blur of fear, duty, and calculated performance. She must please him, but she must also intrigue him. She must be submissive, but also memorable. Her future depends on it. If she succeeds, if the Sultan is pleased with her, her status changes overnight. She is no longer a simple carrier. She is elevated to the rank of Iqbal, the fortunate one. She is given her own private chambers, her own servants, and a higher stipend. She is now officially a royal consort. But this elevation does not bring safety. It brings a whole new level of danger. She has just painted a target on her back. Every other woman in the harem, from the lowest carrier to the most established consorts, now sees her as a threat. The whispers in the bathhouses will now be about her. The smiles of her former friends will now be laced with poison. The game has just become infinitely more deadly. Her next goal is no longer just to survive, but to secure her position. And in the Ottoman Harem, there is only one way to do that. She must conceive and bear the Sultan a child. Preferably, a son. The news of a pregnancy is a seismic event in the harem. When our Iqbal is confirmed to be with child, her world transforms once again. Her allowance skyrockets. She is given a lavish suite of rooms and a small army of servants dedicated to her every need. Her diet is carefully managed, her safety paramount. She is now a precious vessel, for she carries a potential heir to the throne, a Sazed. If she gives birth to a son, her status will be cemented. She will become a Kadın Efendi, one of the Sultan's official wives, a position of immense prestige and power. But this triumph is shadowed by a terrifying reality. Her pregnancy makes her the #1 target for every other ambitious woman in the harem. The jealousy is murderous. Rival consorts, desperate for their own sons to have a clearer path to the throne, will stop at nothing. Her food might be poisoned. A trusted servant might be a spy paid to cause a miscarriage. A wet floor could be intentionally left for her to slip and fall. The paranoia is constant and suffocating. She can trust no one, not even the midwife or the doctor, who could be in the pay of a rival. The 9 months of pregnancy are a war of nerves, a battle fought with suspicion and hyper-vigilance. And then the day comes. Amidst prayers and rituals, she gives birth. A son. The palace erupts in celebration. Cannons are fired from the city walls, one for each day of the week. Festivals are declared, and wealth is distributed to the poor. Our former slave girl is now the mother of a prince, a sultana. She has climbed higher than she could have ever imagined. But as she holds her infant son, she knows a dreadful truth. She has not saved him. She has merely entered him into the deadliest lottery in the world. For in the Ottoman Empire there is a law, a cold and pragmatic tradition that hangs over every cradle in the royal nursery. It is the law of fratricide. This law, formalized by Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror, was designed to prevent the devastating civil wars that had plagued the early empire. When a sultan died, his sons would often raise armies and fight each other for the throne, tearing the empire apart. The solution was as simple as it was horrifying. The new sultan, upon his accession, had the legal right, and indeed, the sacred duty, to eliminate all of his brothers and half-brothers. The decree was chillingly clear. For the welfare of the state, The one of my sons to whom God grants the sultanate may lawfully execute his brothers." This turned the harem from a place of simple rivalry into a death match between mothers. Each Kadin Effendi with a son knew that her child's survival depended entirely on him reaching the throne first. And if he did, his first official act would be to order the execution of all his siblings, the sons of the other women she lived with, women she might have once called friends. Imagine the atmosphere this created. Every time one sultana looked at another's son, she saw a future threat to her own child's life. Every boy's birthday was a reminder that he was growing closer to the age of either ruling or being murdered. The princes themselves grew up in what was known as the cafes. The cage, a set of opulent apartments within the harem, where they were kept under a luxurious form of house arrest. They were forbidden from having children or gaining military and administrative experience, lest they build a power base. They lived in constant fear, knowing that the arrival of the palace executioners could come at any moment, signaled by the chilling sound of the chief executioner's footsteps. When a sultan died, the Grand Vizier would send for the eldest son in the cafes. As he was being acclaimed as the new ruler, a squad of royal mutes, chosen for the task because they could not hear the pleas of their victims, nor speak of what they had done, would be dispatched to the chambers of the other princes. The weapon of choice was a silk bowstring, as shedding royal blood with a blade was considered taboo. The princes, some of them mere infants, would be strangled in silence. The most infamous example was Sultan Mehmed III, who in 1595 had 19 of his brothers and half, brothers many of them babies, strangled on the day of his accession. Their grieving mothers were then exiled to the old palace to live out their days in obscurity. This was the future our sultana now faced. Her beautiful baby boy was either a future sultan or a future victim. There was no middle ground, and so her ambition, which was once for herself, now transforms into a fierce, all-consuming mission to ensure her son's survival. She is no longer just playing the game for power, she is playing it for her child's life. And she will do anything, bribe, spy, blackmail, and even kill to win. Her political education now begins in earnest. She forges a powerful alliance with the Kisla Asotasi, the chief black eunuch, using her vast allowance to bribe him and his network of spies. He becomes her eyes and ears in the palace and in the capital. She cultivates relationships with key figures in the government, the janissaries, the elite infantry units of the army, and the religious scholars. She spends decades building a web of loyalty and influence, all from behind the secluded walls of the harem. She plays her rivals against each other with masterful precision, spreading rumors to discredit the mother of a rival prince, or arranging for a key supporter of another faction to be disgraced and dismissed. Her life is a constant chess game, where the pieces are human lives, and the board is the empire itself. She becomes a master of what was known as the Sultanate of Women, a period of about 130 years where the women of the harem, particularly the mothers of sultans, wielded extraordinary political influence. She follows in the footsteps of legends like Hatshepsut Sultan, the slave girl from Ruthenia, who so captivated Suleiman, the Magnificent, that he broke centuries of tradition to marry her, making her his legal wife. Hatshepsut ruthlessly engineered the downfall of her rivals, including the execution of Suleiman's first-born son, Mustafa, to clear the path for her own son to the throne. Our sultana learns from these histories. She is patient, cunning, and utterly ruthless. She watches as the reigning sultan grows old or becomes unstable. She waits for her moment, and then it comes. The sultan dies. Now, everything hangs in the balance. In the chaotic hours that follow the sovereign's death, a power vacuum opens. It is a frantic race. Our sultana must act faster than her rivals. Using her network, she ensures her allies in the court immediately seize control. They bypass the other princes in the cafes and go directly to her son's chambers. They proclaim him sultan before anyone else can react. As her son is led out to receive the allegiance of the court officials, our sultana gives the terrible necessary order. The mutes are dispatched. The silk bowstrings are drawn. The sons of her rivals are eliminated. The screams of their mothers echo in the harem, but our sultana cannot afford pity. It was their sons or hers. She has won. Her son is the Padishah, the ruler of the world, and she, a girl once sold for a handful of coins, has now reached the apex of power. She is the Valide Sultan, the Queen Mother, the most powerful woman in the Ottoman Empire. As Valide Sultan, her power is almost absolute. She is no longer a prisoner of the harem. The harem is now her fortress, the command center from which she rules. she receives a massive income, controlling vast estates across the empire, giving her a personal fortune that rivals the state treasury. She becomes a de facto ruler, especially if her son is young, inexperienced, or weak. She attends council meetings from behind a latticed screen, her whispers to the Grand Vizier becoming imperial policy. She appoints and dismisses the highest officials of the state. Foreign ambassadors seek audiences with her, knowing that her favor is key to any negotiation. She commissions mosques, hospitals, and charitable foundations, leaving a public mark on the empire's landscape. She is, for all intents and purposes, the empress. But the throne is not a comfortable seat. It is a seat of perpetual anxiety. Power is a magnet for enemies. The generals she slighted, the viziers she dismissed, the rival factions at court. They are all waiting for her to make a mistake. The paranoia that defined her life as a concubine is magnified 100-fold. She trusts no one, not even her own son, the Sultan, for history is filled with sons who grew to resent their mother's power and had them exiled or killed. Her every waking moment is consumed with maintaining her grip on the empire. She is surrounded by luxury, but she is utterly alone, the ultimate survivor in a world designed to destroy her. And power in the Ottoman court is a bloody wheel that never stops turning. It builds you up, and then it crushes you. Consider the fate of the most powerful Valide Sultan of them all, Kafunsum Sultan. Like our protagonist, she was a Greek slave girl who rose through the ranks. She was the consort of Sultan Ahmed I, and the mother of two future sultans, Murad IV and Ibrahim. After Murad's death, she saw her mentally unstable son Ibrahim ascend the throne, and she ruled through him. When Ibrahim was deposed and executed, her 7-year-old grandson, Mehmed I, became sultan. Katsum should have retired, giving way to the boy's mother, Turhan Hattis, who was now the rightful Valide sultan. But Katatsum refused to relinquish power. She was too used to it, too addicted to the game. She conspired to depose her young grandson and replace him with another, more pliable prince, whose mother she could easily control. But she underestimated the new generation. She underestimated Turhan Hattis, another slave girl, who had learned the harem's brutal lessons all too well. Turhan discovered Katsam's plot. On a September night in 1651, she acted first. Her men, led by the chief black eunuchs she had won to her side, stormed Kaputsam's quarters. The most powerful woman in the empire, nearly 70 years old, was found hiding in a small cabinet. She was dragged out, her jewels ripped from her ears, so violently her lobes were torn. They strangled her. Some accounts say they used a curtain cord. Others, more chillingly, say they used her own long, grey hair. The ultimate survivor was killed by the next survivor. The bloody wheel had turned once more. This was the inevitable end. This was the price of survival, the final, bloody payment on the path from slave to sultana. They could climb out of the mud of the slave market. They could learn to walk the golden road. They could outwit and outlive their rivals. They could even rule the world from a gilded cage. But in the end, the harem always claimed its due. The very system that created them, the cycle of violence and ambition, was the same system that would eventually consume them.